Chapter 20, Chapter 18, The Old Man in the Cave. Chapter 18, The Old Man in the Cave.
There it is, mon amis,
Jean said as they clung to his back, riding the form of the giant frog he had been granted by the breath of rivers across the lake high in the mountains of Sima. On the west side, in a tiny cove with only a single winding trail leading off into the heights, a cavern mouth faced the lake. It was sunset, and they could see the glow of a fire inside.
It seems that our host is in residence. Fortunate, yes. Yeah, that's one way of putting it,
Ryu agreed, hopping off as they reached the shore. Once they were all off, Jean joined them on shore and transformed back to his normal form.
All right, let's go say hi to the nice man.
He led them into the cave, following a short tunnel before emerging into a larger chamber, where a campfire was indeed built in a pit in the middle of the floor, smoke rising into what seemed to be a natural chimney in the ceiling. A blanket was lying on the floor in one corner, and a couple crates were stacked in another, apparently containing the residents' possessions.
Warm yourselves by the fire, sons, and the morning will come soon,
the old man said, quiet and calm, as he turned a spit with several wild birds on it over the flames. Despite his age, he was still clearly tall and strong, with a face that had been handsome once, despite the horizontal scar across his forehead. His hair was long and white, and the robes he wore were red, but it was his eyes that caught one's attention, green and burning with some ancient, deep-felt anger.
I'll tell you stories of a better time, in a place that we once knew. The cryptic old wise man card.
Bao asked dryly.
Really? That one's older than you are, Gramps. Ha!
The old man barked.
Yeah, guess it is, isn't it? You have no idea how right you are, kid. I was joking, anyways. Come on, sit down, all of you. Dinner'll be ready in a few more minutes. I made sure to bring back extra tonight. How kind of you,
Kat commented, taking a seat.
Makes a girl wonder how you knew to expect company, though.
She glanced at Spar, who hadn't said much during the trip out.
I am surprised as well,
the grass man agreed, though his voice was as empty of emotion as always.
I've got my sources,
the old man said, shrugging.
And yes, Miss Chan, that means I know who you all are, so we can skip the introductions. Call me Martin. Way I see it, the less you know about me, the happier you'll be. And the less you find out I know about you, the happier you'll be, too. That sound about right? Normally, I'd agree with you,
Ryu admitted, narrowing his eyes.
We're not exactly keen on the whole destiny bullshit bit. But this is a bit too much, even for us. Who the hell are you? What's your stake in this? And why did you want to meet us? Already told you, kid, it's Martin,
the old man repeated casually.
My stake? You could say I'm the referee. I'm the guy who makes sure both sides play by the rules. Mainly because, at this point, I don't really give a crap who wins, Laden or the demons. Not my problem anymore, either way. As for why I wanted to meet you here.
He sighed.
That would be because there's something you're going to need, down the road, and I'm the only guy left in the outside world who can give it to you. Trust me, this was not my idea. If it had been up to me, I'd have stayed out of this. That a fact,
Rand muttered, eyes locked on him.
And what is this thing the chief needs so bad, then? The second stage of the breath of fire,
Martin told him, face calm as they all blinked in surprise.
That's right, kids. I'm a light dragon. I stayed behind, when the rest of them went on. I've been waiting for you here, ever since that day. Ridiculous,
Spar said, sharp and quick.
The light dragons departed hundreds of years ago. If you were alive back then, you must be. Animal-based life forms simply don't live that long. It's biologically impossible. This from the guy who's just getting past his first millennium.
Martin rolled his eyes.
Yeah, you're right. Normally. But I ain't normal. There's ways that aren't exactly available to the general public. Whether it's a good idea or not is another story.
He stared into the fire.
Hundreds of years, kids. That's how long I've been living in this cave, waiting for you. That's how long I've known your names, and who you were.
He spat into the flames.
Creeps me the hell out. I always hated that kind of bullshit. But there's no helping it. Just the way the world works. I am not entirely sure I like the way this conversation is going,
Jean said, absolutely seriously. Nobody could say anything to that.
Who are you?
Ryu asked, eventually, quietly.
It's Martin,
the old man replied wearily.
For the third time, it's just Martin. That's all. Back when I was born, people only had one name, and mine's Martin. Trust me, kids. You're right on about destiny bullshit. You don't want to know more. The turkeys look like they're done. Let's eat. Then I'll perform the ceremony. You can crash here for the night, if you want, and then tomorrow, you'll head on south to meet the wise tree, and that'll be that. If all goes well, you'll never see me again.
He glanced over at them, and the anger in his eyes had faded to empty, burned-out embers.
Have some turkey.
Thanks, Sten said, and the others all muttered acknowledgement as well, as they divided up the meat between them. They ate in silence. Something about the conversation had impressed upon them all that this wasn't a normal night, and none of them knew what to do about that. It was almost tangible, just how out of their league they were by just being here. Something about the old man, no matter how innocuous he seemed, felt of something even greater and stranger than Kawadara had been, and much more subtly.
All right, let's get down to business,
Martin spoke up once again once they were all done eating.
This is gonna be a little tricky. See, the right way of doing this, back in my day, was that you had to make pilgrimages to the shrines of Loden, and fight another dragon clansman who had failed the test in the past. Problem is, the shrines aren't around anymore, there's nobody for you to fight, and Loden can kiss my ass, so we're gonna have to do this a little different. You think?
Ryu replied sardonically.
If you know that much about us, you know my first step wasn't exactly textbook. We're not going to have to go through that again, are we? Because I'm not entirely sure it'd be worth it. This cave ain't much, but I don't want it blown sky high, either.
Martin snorted.
No, no. You'll just have to fight me, that's all. Oh, is that all?
Ryu asked cheerfully, then made a face.
As if I can't see where that's going to lead. This is gonna suck, isn't it? More or less.
Martin admitted, just as cheerful.
Don't worry, you don't have to win. The trick'll be staying in dragon form the whole time. Yeah, I can't really do that,
Ryu admitted.
At all. Here.
The old man threw him a couple of dried wise fruit berries.
Down one of these the moment you transform, then take the next one about 15 seconds later. It'll suck, but that should keep you going for half a minute, and that'll be all we need.
He gave him a look.
One more thing. Don't hold back, or else it won't work. Now then, everybody else might want to get out of the way. Up to you, of course, but it won't be too pleasant in here soon enough. Don't have to tell us twice,
Bao assured him as they all scrambled for the exit, even Jean and Spar.
Smart.
Martin chuckled.
All right, kid, here we go.
Standing up, he stretched his arms and transformed, growing twice as tall as before as his body deformed, claws and scales and fangs and wings covering him. He became an adult dragon, a glittering golden one, with a beak-like snout over wicked fangs, his eyes reptilian and bright. His wings were massive, and his tail lashed the floor as he towered over Ryu.
Your turn now. Just pick one, doesn't matter which it is. They're all the same as far as this is concerned. If you insist,
Ryu drawled, as he transformed into the flame whelp. The instant he became the dragon, he did as the old man had said, downing one of the berries. The wise fruit replenished one's magic stores, but they were mildly poisonous. 1 or 2 would only make you feel sick, but taking too many would endanger your life. As always, the berry tasted so wretched it was almost physically painful, but he ignored that in favor of launching a fireball straight at Martin.
That's the ticket.
Martin laughed, taking the attack without flinching.
All right, my turn, then.
Even as the fire burned into his chest, he opened his own jaws and roared, and from them came a blinding white light that filled the cave, washing over them both. It was like throwing a water balloon at a tidal wave. His flames were simply drowned in the torrent of energy, and then it was around him, all over him, filling his eyes, his ears, his mind. Are you going to die? Martin's voice said, though it didn't seem audible. It was like he was speaking through the white light itself, his words entering Ryu's mind directly. You're in way over your head, kid, and you've known it since you got here. You don't stand a chance against me. If you don't figure this out, you'll die here, and you know you will. You know I'll kill you, if it comes to that. That I don't actually give a crap about anything now, even you. Not anymore. So. What are you going to do about it? Fight back, Ryu snarled inside his mind, downing the second wise fruit. The old man had been right, the burst of internal energy that had transformed his body and given the whelp existence had actually stayed this time, instead of flickering out and fading almost immediately like it usually did, but now it was starting to dwindle. The fruit shoved it back, though, gave him more power, more will, and he didn't even care about the pain. It doesn't matter, he roared, spewing another fireball. None of that matters. I'm still alive, and as long as I live, there is will. There's hope. Never give up. Don't look back for a moment, or the past will catch up to you, and drag you under. Don't look back. Don't look back. Keep your eyes forward, on the future, and fight and scream and drag yourself towards it, no matter what's in your way. And screw the odds. He felt it, then, like he was transforming a second time on top of the first, which he immediately realized he was. The fire filling his body and soul exploded, growing hotter, wilder, and stronger. His round whelp's body warped, growing larger and lean, as his arms and legs and neck and tail all lengthened. His claws extended, as did his horns, and his face shifted, losing its cuteness and becoming the intimidating visage of a predator reptile. Last of all, his wings stretched to their full width, no longer stubby and useless, as he roared his triumph.
There you go,
Martin said, smiling, as he returned to human form.
You got it, kid. Knew you would. What the hell just happened here?
Ryu asked as he did the same, eyes wide.
And what the hell did you turn into? Hey, wait a second here.
He examined himself, surprised. Despite what had happened, there wasn't a scratch on him.
Gold Dragon,
Martin explained.
Back in the day, the second stage gave you a fourth standard form, a different one for light and dark dragons. Dark dragons kind of got the better end of the stick there. The black dragon wasn't anything special, but it was good enough. The gold dragon, on the other hand. Well, it's damn useful against the undead, but it's completely useless otherwise. Doesn't even hurt.
He chuckled, glancing down at the slight burns on his robes.
As for your other question, we synchronized our breath of fire, and I was able to draw yours out.
Cool. Ryu suddenly fell to one knee, as the exhaustion hit him all at once. It was just as bad as when he had first transformed, a sudden bone-deep weariness that threatened to knock him out by force if it had to.
I take it I don't have that gold dragon thing, then. I've got all the others, though, right? Fire, ice, and thunder drake forms are all yours,
Martin agreed.
Not gold, though. The breath of fire in your bloodline's too weak for that. And before you ask, no, we can't just do that again to get you up to the third stage. How did I know it wasn't going to be that easy?
Ryu rolled his eyes.
Because it's never that easy,
the old man retorted, and they both chuckled a little.
Fair enough,
he agreed.
So, does the third stage give me 5? Try 1.
Martin was still smiling, but there was little humor in it now.
And it won't be a standard. The third stage is the one that's personal, and the dragon you become then will be given shape and form out of your own heart and soul. What you are at the end of it all, when nothing is left but yourself. You'll need to find another dragon clansman to draw that one out for you. Doing it this way only works once per person.
He raised his voice.
Alright, the rest of you can come back in here. We're done. I honestly don't know if that makes sense or not,
Ryu muttered as the group ran back in.
Hey, guys. It worked. Not up for a demonstration right now, though. Just save it for the next asshole, then,
Cat suggested, punching his shoulder and nearly flooring him.
Oops, sorry. Didn't figure you would be that beat. He's gonna be like that for a while, until he gets used to this, too,
Martin explained as Bao helped Ryu back to his feet.
It'll still exhaust him then, of course, but he won't feel like he was thrown over a waterfall and missed the river. Is it that bad?
Bao asked sympathetically.
Don't think I could walk out of this cave if I tried,
Ryu replied, wincing.
Looks like we'll be taking you up on that offer to crash here, old man.
He paused, then glanced at Spar.
You do. Well. Sleep, right? Correct.
Spar nodded.
I do not require as much as most animal-based life forms, but a few hours of slumber is required at periodic intervals in order to prevent exhaustion, brain damage, and eventual death. Right then,
Ryu said after a moment, before turning back to Martin.
Guess we owe you a thank you, at least. No charge.
Martin sighed heavily.
I've lived with that weight on my shoulders for a long time. It's good to have it off. Didn't we already talk to you about that mystery mentor act?
Sten pointed out dryly.
Come on, man. Hey, you never said I couldn't joke about it, did you?
Martin shot back.
Even I'm not serious all the time, you know. Could have fooled me.
Ryu shook his head.
Seriously, though. If you're supposed to be neutral, why go out of your way to help us? You said you had to do this, but you don't seem like the kind of guy who takes well to having to do anything. Why? Why even bother? You won't give up, will you?
Martin closed his eyes before continuing.
Because our lives are parallel. That's why. Now answer me this, in return.
Opening his eyes again, he stared at Ryu.
When you go into your pretty little cathedral on Sunday mornings, not that you have been lately, and you bow your head and listen to the priest droning away out of a book you've heard a million times before. What do you pray for? Me.
Ryu replied after a long moment.
I pray that tomorrow comes today. Thought so.
The old man shook his head.
Hope that works better for you than it did for me. Now get some sleep.
He turned away, heading over towards his blanket.
You've got a long month ahead of you.
There didn't seem to be anything more to say than that. They'd all fallen asleep fairly quickly. After Ryu and Martin's discussion, nobody had felt like talking, so nobody did. They'd simply set up their bedrolls like they usually did when making camp in the wild. The cavern was large enough to accommodate them all easily. Some drifted off faster than others, but within the hour, the rest of the team were all fast asleep. Only when she was sure they were all out did Nina rise from her place on the floor and walk over to sit by the fire, waiting for Martin to join her.
I was wondering if you would get up the nerve,
the old man said eventually, sitting down next to her.
Kind of noticeable, the way you haven't said a word since you came in here. You were the only one, the others weren't exactly chatty, but you didn't make a peep, and you were looking at me like you owed me money. I've seen you before,
Nina told him, eyes locked on the fire, as her mind reached into a past she had tried to put behind her.
When I was young. Have you?
Martin asked, sounding mildly curious.
You came to India once a year,
Nina recalled, thinking back to when she had first realized the routine.
Nobody in the city or the castle except my parents seemed to know who you were, but they were all ordered to let you through. I never saw you talk to anybody, or do anything, except what you came for.
She took a deep breath before continuing.
You went down into the royal family's crypt, all by yourself, and then left hours later, and trying to follow you down there was punishable by death. My parents said they'd tell me who you were when I was older, but your wings sprouted, before that happened, and that put an end to that,
Martin said, voice no longer amused.
If I ever find out who was responsible for that stupid superstition, they'd better hope they're dead. That's one of the things I'll never forgive myself for, and I've got a lot of those. If I'd been more on the ball, I'd have seen that one coming and taken care of it long before you were born. Who are you?
Nina whispered, though she already knew the answer. She had known at the instant she realized he was a light dragon.
A ghost of the past,
Martin said somberly.
The name I was born with is no longer mine to claim. My time has passed, and it's left me behind. Now, I'm just the weird old dragon man who lives in a cave up in the mountains, and my name's Martin. That's it. That's all you're getting, Nina. I'm sorry, but staying out of this is the only real way I can help you kids now. If I got involved, any chance you had of actual free will would go straight out the window, and destiny would throw the rope around your necks. I'm still not sure how much of it I really believe,
Nina pointed out, shaking her head.
Demons are one thing, but gods? I'm a Windian, born and bred, and we're not exactly religious as a general rule. Good,
Martin growled, green eyes blazing.
Smartest course of action. Keep it up. Even if the gods are real, that's no excuse to go believing in them. Trust a god, and you'll pay for it, sooner or later. Hell, look at Miria. 1,000 years since she died, and even the most devout believer in Saint Eva who scoffs at the thought of the old gods will still twitch at her name. Call her a god or a spirit or whatever you want, kid, but there was nothing like her. Even Barbary's on the other side of the line. He's still mortal. And Loden?
Nina asked after a moment.
He seems to want to help us as much as possible, but he won't tell us anything about destiny or fate. He says the same things as you, that if he does, we won't have a choice in matters anymore. I wouldn't worship him, but calling him a friend is another story. So, now he feels remorse.
Martin snarled.
Too little, too late. You're one of the smartest ones in your group, your highness, so I'll tell you this much. Don't trust a word out of Loden's mouth. The reason he's only doing so much to guide you is because of the rules we set up, to keep him and the demons from just grabbing you kids and throwing you wherever they want. If it weren't for that, he'd be doing a lot more than just giving vague advice, and you wouldn't like it one bit. Just be glad he has to play nice this time. You claim that he's not truly our friend, then?
Nina raised an eyebrow.
Bold words, Martin, and I'm not entirely convinced that you're impartial. You seem to have a grudge against him. A personal one. You could say that, all right,
Martin muttered, the green fire in his eyes dimming.
Look, Nina. He doesn't do it on purpose. Even I'll concede that much to the old bastard. He honestly thinks he's guiding you, being a good mentor, helping you live and learn. He wants to be your friend, he knows, he doesn't have many of those. And the last person who'll join your little group. Well, it's somebody he has a special attachment to. You refer to Dees,
Nina murmured, and she didn't mean her old roommate back at the Orion Magic School, though she suddenly, idly wondered just why she had been given that particular name.
The legendary sorceress of Wisdom, who awakens from the sleep of eternity to aid the heroes of the Light Dragons when the time comes to save the world, and returns to her slumber once her work is done. The last of the long-extinct Indigo clan, according to herself, a clan with no presence in history aside from her. After going through more booze, smokes and gambling than anybody else in the world could live through,
Martin added dryly, but his tone was oddly affectionate.
She'll be a good friend, though, and a loyal one. Try to cut her a few breaks when she joins up, this is going to be a new one on her, and it might be a bit tricky for her to get the hang of not cluing you guys into everything she knows. She'll take to it in the end, though. She's never come right out and said it, but I always thought that if she could be a normal person, she would. I'll do my best,
Nina promised.
I seem to be missing something, though. Why not trust Loden, then, as much as her? Because Dees won't use words like expendable, necessary, and sacrifice, to refer to her friends,
Martin explained coldly.
Loden tries, like I said, but when it comes down to it, he can't help himself. He calls it seeing the big picture. Let a few men die, or worse, for the sake of the rest of the world. In the end, it always comes down to that for Loden, and he always chooses the same thing, no matter how much he hates doing it. He'll apologize, and he'll mourn, and he'll never forgive himself. But he'll still do it. I read a history book once,
Nina said after a long, silent moment.
It claimed to quote you, and the others, verbatim. One of those quotes was about Loden, and Miria. Pieces on a chessboard, it said you said. Yeah, that was me, all right.
Martin chuckled without humor.
Says it all, really. I think it's got something to do with being a god, whether you spell the word with a capital G or not. Something about being one. You don't look at other people the same way. Loden's not as bad as Miria, but he's bad enough. Neither one of them ever stopped to question their own actions, to wonder if maybe they weren't doing the right thing. I don't think they know how. End of the day, pieces on a chessboard. All there is to it. What of Saint Eva, then?
Nina asked gently.
I believe the name Indian faith doesn't center around any divinity, but I must confess, ever since Loden began speaking to me, I've been wondering about Saint Eva as well. Is he real, too? Oh, he's real, all right,
Martin admitted, the blaze in his eyes flaring up once more.
And trust me, that is one subject you really don't want me to say anything more on, or it would ruin the whole game, right then and there. All right,
Nina agreed.
It was more idle curiosity than anything else.
They watched the fire burn for a little longer, quiet and still, before she spoke again.
Will it be all right, in the end? For us, I mean. That's one thing even I don't know, kid,
Martin said quietly.
But if it helps, I'll be wishing you luck. That much, at least, I can do.
He smiled at her then, and there was something deep and painful and ancient in his eyes.
You know, you don't really look all that much like her. Only a little bit, in the face, but not the eyes. That's about the only thing about this whole business that I actually like. We never really look the same.
Standing up, he stretched.
You had better get some sleep now, kid. Tomorrow's going to be a big day for you. They usually are, in our line of work,
Nina conceded, standing as well and walking back to her gear, then paused, looking over her shoulder.
Thank you, great father.
Martin didn't speak, but the smile he gave her and the almost tangible gratitude in his own glance were enough. They left the next morning, without a word to Martin, who didn't rise from where he was sleeping. Once they'd had their breakfast, Jean warped them down to the southern border of Sima and got them through without a hassle, to the sea of trees on the other side. As Spar had promised, it provided navigation for them by means of listening to the forest around them, and the trip proceeded fairly well over the next week, aside from the predatory basilisks that stalked the woods. Those proved slightly troublesome.
Alright, this one's dead too,
Ryu grunted, pulling his sword out of the chest of the ugliest bird he had ever seen, aside from all the others they had previously killed. It was a bipedal land hunter, feathered in blue and red aside from its long, scaly neck and tail. Its clawed feet bore ripping claws, and its beak was wickedly curved, but a sufficient amount of metal, muscle, and magic had killed it, like any other monster.
Good work, Spar. It seemed appropriate, under the circumstances,
the grassman said calmly, retracting the long, ivy-like whip it had wrapped around the basilisk's neck with one flick of its wrist.
It certainly stopped it from disemboweling me, as it was attempting, and I believe that was the maximum priority at the immediate moment. Yeah, something like that,
Cat agreed, pulling the end of her staff out from the underjaw of the basilisk's mate with a slight grunt.
Gotta admit, that was pretty cool of you, just standing your ground and facing off with it like that. Was there something else I should be doing?
Spar asked her curiously, blinking.
Never mind. At least it wasn't another cave bear,
Bao pointed out, reloading his crossbow.
Those things really suck.
He glanced at the forest up ahead, indistinguishable from that around them, as deep in the trees as they were. Even the sunlight was filtered through the overhead canopy of branches and leaves, and moss grew everywhere.
You said we're almost there, right? Correct.
Spar nodded.
We should arrive within the hour. Shall we press on?
Turning, it began leading the way through the trees once more, the rest of them following close behind.
Hey, boss.
Sten asked quietly, inclining his head backwards.
Mind if I have a word with you, real quick? Sure.
Ryu fell back, and the Highlander did as well, until the two of them were several feet behind the rest of the party.
What's up? There's no real diplomatic way to put this, so I'm just going to come right out and say it,
Sten admitted with a grimace.
Look, this might be a bit hypocritical of me, considering how I joined up, but... How long do you figure Spar's going to be staying around? Well, it's not really hiring on, is it?
Ryu reminded him.
We just need its help for the same job it needs ours on. Once we've got this mess with the wise tree taken care of, we'll probably go our separate ways.
He raised an eyebrow.
Is there some problem between the two of you that I haven't picked up on? It doesn't seem like a bad guy. Bad fella. Not a bad guy, no,
Sten hedged.
Just weird, boss. I mean, setting aside the fact that it's, well, even without that. Does it even have any emotions? Like, at all? It's like nothing ever even seems to bother it. You, too.
Cat muttered, falling back behind the pack to join them.
Yeah, I've got sharp ears. Big deal. I gotta agree with Sten, Ryu, I don't not like Spar, but I don't think I do like it, either. It's just weird.
She grimaced.
It's been months since August's little game, and I still get pissed off just thinking about it, but Sten... It's like it doesn't even care what Tusk was doing to it. We're not exactly the most normal crowd around ourselves, if it comes to that.
Ryu defended the grassman weakly, but mentally, he had to admit that they had a point. There was something about Spar's emotionless, logical personality that was off-putting, even alien, and its asexuality didn't help matters.
There's not normal, and then there's staring down a charging basilisk without even blinking,
Cat pointed out.
And it doesn't sleep nearly as much as it acts like it does. A couple hours, tops, and then it just fakes it the rest of the night. Hey, there's something I hadn't thought about until recently,
Sten joked.
We could have it stand watch for most of the night and it wouldn't mind. Let the rest of us get more sleep.
Cat kicked him in the shin.
Ow. Jean likes it,
Ryu said, glancing up ahead to where the prince was chattering cheerfully with Spar.
Jean likes everybody.
Cat snorted.
Remember how long it took him to stop thinking Kawadara wasn't that bad a guy? Point,
Ryu conceded.
Bao and Ran seem to be getting along with it okay too, though, as far as I can see. Ran's probably just glad to have somebody else with a working brain in this outfit aside from him and Nina.
Sten chuckled.
Did I hear my name?
The princess asked lightly, drifting back to join them.
I take it we're discussing our newest companion. Yeah,
Ryu agreed.
These two don't really care for it. I'm not exactly warming up to it myself,
Nina admitted.
Maybe if there was anything it actually seemed to care about, but... Yeah, but you don't warm up to anybody in just a week, do you?
Cat smirked, and Ryu relaxed a little. If both her and Sten were making jokes, then nobody was really all that serious about this.
A fair point,
Nina conceded, then frowned thoughtfully.
There's something else to keep in mind, however. We haven't seen any statues of Loden since it joined us, have we?
Shit, Cat muttered, and Sten said something heavily accented in a different language under his breath that sounded similar.
I hadn't thought of that. Ray couldn't hear him,
Sten recalled.
Neither has anybody else in that town. I asked the old man to check that, when we brought that thief back to clear Bo's name. Speaking of which, neither did she.
He shook his head.
Skias. If this destiny bullshit says Spar needs to stick with us for the long haul. We are here, mon ami s.
Jean called back, and they all fell silent, moving forward to rejoin the group.
Look, see the wise tree. Holy shit,
Val murmured as they walked into an open, shaded grove. The reason for the lack of other trees within 50 feet was readily apparent, the wise tree's branches were simply that broad. To say it was the largest tree Ryu had ever seen would be a gross understatement. Its trunk had to be at least 30 feet across, rising up from a spread of roots like a serpent's nest to tower up, and up into the heavens for what was probably almost a mile before spreading out into a mass of leaves and branches that completely blocked out the sky from where they were standing.
Hey,
Rand grunted.
Well, I'm impressed. No kidding,
Cat agreed, shaking her head in awe.
And this thing talks. Not without another of our kind to translate,
Spar explained, its voice even quieter than normal.
Once we reach elderhood, we lose the ability to communicate verbally. Only through the language of the forest can we speak then. Wait.
Sten held up a hand.
One of us? Does this mean that when you get old, you're going to turn into one of these wise trees? Correct.
Spar smiled slightly.
The wise tree is the final stage. What's known as a grassman is the young adult. I believe, if we translated my lifespan to equate to yours, I would be roughly around the same relative age as most of you. So, how old are you actually, then?
Rand asked, scratching his head.
It has been 1,120 years since I first sprouted,
Spar said blithely, ignoring the various shocked reactions from the others around it.
I have been in my second stage for 160 of those years, before which my memory is somewhat murky. Our first stage doesn't really have that much mental functionality. Doesn't that get kind of lonely?
Bao wondered after a long moment.
I mean, if all your friends get old and die. There is a reason my kind tend to avoid socialization with the rest of the world,
Spar noted quietly, and for the first time, its golden eyes actually showed something other than calm appraisal.
Befriending members of other clans is, well, it's not recommended, for precisely the reasons you've stated.
It actually frowned for a moment as it continued.
By seeking contact with other clans, I suppose I would be considered something of a rebel among my people.
It turned its head to glance up at the wise tree.
Gandaroof has never really approved of that. You're a...
Cat started to demand incredulously, then paused, mulling it over.
Well, maybe. But why's it matter what this old geezer thinks about that?
She glanced up at the wise tree.
No offense. We are a difficult clan to offend,
Spar assured her.
As for your question, I believe it's considered appropriate to honor one's parent in your culture as well, yes. But of course.
Jean agreed, then paused.
Well, perhaps it depends on the parent, in some cases, yes. And yet.
He blinked as the zenny dropped.
A moment. This wise tree. It is your father. Parent,
Spar clarified, a flash of irritation crossing its features for a moment.
Gender-specific pronouns. Honestly.
It shook its head.
But yes, Gandaroof seeded me. I suppose that makes my recommendation to seek its assistance, out of all the wise trees, somewhat biased, but I really do believe it to be the most intelligent. Hey, we trust your judgment, man,
Ryu told him, and the others all nodded.
If you say this guy's our best call, we'll go with him. I see.
Spar smiled slightly.
I appreciate your confidence in me. Well then, let's get down to business, shall we?
Turning to the wise tree, it advanced slowly, until it was standing as close to the tree as it could without stepping on the roots. Leaning forward slightly, it pressed its hands against the trunk.
Gandaroof. I have returned.
A long moment passed, and then the wood of the trunk began rippling, like a lake when a stone was thrown into it. An old man's voice, creaky and ancient, said as a wooden face appeared, rising out of the trunk as if from water. It was the face of an elderly male human, its eyebrows and beard massively overgrown, and it squinted down at them, larger than Rand's entire body.
There you are, Spar. You're late. My apologies, Elder,
Spar replied, lowering its head respectfully.
There were extenuating circumstances, but we're here now.
It glanced back at the others.
When I bid you farewell, intending to go travel the world, you told me that when I returned to see you next, I would be accompanied by those who I would be bound to assist. These are the ones you told me of. They seek to uncover the demonic corruption that fills their society, and purge it from the world, a goal I find myself in agreement with. We've come here seeking your wisdom.
It nodded at Ryu, who took that as his cue to step forward.
Sir,
he said, dipping his own head momentarily.
My name's Ryu Battison. I'll be honest, we're mercenaries, and we're doing this for profit more than anything else, but we do want to stop this problem. Any help you could give us would be appreciated. Very good,
Spar murmured under its breath.
My kind appreciate honesty.
It turned back to Gandaroof then and continued.
Please, Elder, tell us what you know of these demons, especially those in the place known as Gate. I already told you, you're late.
Gandaroof growled.
Too late. The demons have found me already, Spar. They've cast some sort of curse on me, and clouded my memory. The knowledge you seek, that I've been keeping specifically for you all ever since I became aware of this threat. I can't think of it. It's like a fog inside my mind. Is that even possible?
Sten asked skeptically.
It is,
Nina murmured, narrowing her eyes.
A mentat. The demons have a mentat on their side. Somehow, I'm not surprised. What the heck is a mentat?
Rand asked, and most of the others nodded in agreement, though Sten's eyes had widened as soon as she had said that word.
A mentat is a very rare kind of mage,
Nina explained.
They specialize in mind magic, in illusions and psychology. What a black mage can do with elemental destruction, or a white mage with healing power, a mentat works with by altering other people's minds, or even their own. History claims they could even transport themselves inside one's consciousness, using something called the world of dreams. It's a subtle, deadly art that's been forgotten by society, there hasn't been one recorded since the Second Dragon War. Moat, the Red Dreamer,
Ryu remembered from his childhood history lessons, clenching his fist.
One of the Dark Dragon Empire's Tiamat unit. Kawadara said something odd,
Jean recalled, stroking his chin.
He claimed that he needed to request assistance from an ally of his, in order to cloud my father's mind, an ally he did not seem particularly fond of. I believe he said the name was Aruhamiral. That doesn't sound like a common name from any culture I've ever heard of.
Sten frowned, and the others shook their heads.
Sounds more like the sort of name a demon lord has. We thought there might have been another one down here. So, where is he?
Cat cracked her knuckles.
We'll find the bastard and bust his head. Problem solved, right? I don't know that, either,
Gandaroof grumbled.
The cur is crafty. He could be anywhere in this forest. The other trees are unaware, as well,
Spar reported quietly.
If he is here, he's able to conceal himself from them. You'll have to go to Tunlin,
Gandaroof explained.
The Second Dragon War. That reminds me. There was an artifact there that the heroes of that war used to counter that Red Dreamer you spoke of. Tunlin's national treasure, the therapy pillow. I remember that.
Bao snapped his fingers.
Moat had put one of their guys into a coma. They used that therapy pillow to go into his mind and break the curse so they could wake him up and recruit him. Ah, I see.
Jean beamed.
Should we be able to convince the people of Tunlin to loan it to us, we will be able to enter your mind and break the curse the same way. And then you'll be able to tell us what's going on.
Ryu nodded decisively.
That settles it, then. We're going back to Tunlin. One problem, boss,
Rand reminded him.
We don't speak music, remember? That magic hood will let us understand what they're saying, but talking back's not gonna work. Something wrong.
This was directed at Sten, who had gone pale as he was talking.
Nah.
The Highlander shook his head quickly, glancing away.
It's nothing. Well, okay,
Ryu said, knowing better but also knowing not to pry.
Let's head back home, take a break, then talk this over. Maybe we can find a translator to hire or something. We'll come up with a plan. Very well.
Spar looked up at Gandaroof, and hesitated for a moment before speaking again.
Please don't do anything dangerous, Elder. We will return once we have the therapy pillow, and then we'll help you. I promise. Don't you do anything dangerous either, Spar,
Gandaroof told it sternly.
You're far too reckless. Be careful out there. You know what we were talking about earlier.
Cat muttered, she and Nina drawing close to Ryu.
Forget about it. Think I just changed my mind, and you know that it doesn't happen often. Spar's an okay guy. Girl. Something. Whatever. I think it'll do just fine,
Nina murmured, glancing over at Sten, who was staring off into space now.
Besides, it's not the one I'm worrying about now. Yeah,
Ryu agreed, then shook his head and raised his voice.
Alright, people, it's late, so we can head back tomorrow morning. Bao, Cat, I trust you'll be able to hunt something up. Rest of you, make camp. Spar, I don't suppose there's a body of water with fish in it anywhere close by around here. Yes, I'll show you,
Spar said, turning to him.
This way.
As they walked off through the trees, it glanced at him.
Why are we staying here? Wouldn't it be more time efficient to go back to this home of yours? Not that much.
Ryu shrugged.
Might as well just warp back first thing tomorrow and then take the day off. Wouldn't really change much, and this way, you can spend a little more time with Gandaroof, first. Ah,
Spar said quietly.
Sentiment. I see.
It thought for a moment.
If I could ask another question. Is there a reason you, Bao and Cat are the only ones who provide our meals on a regular basis? We're the only ones who know how,
Ryu explained.
Fishing isn't as easy as it looks, and neither is hunting. Bringing in game is a lot different from fighting off monsters. You have to go looking for it, not the other way around. Never had much talent for it myself, but fishing's a different story. Always had a knack for that. If the others had any skill at finding food, they would too. Makes sense now. Indeed.
Spar nodded as a deep stream came into view.
The most efficient use of respective skills. I should have guessed sooner.
It glanced around.
With that in mind, I assume it would be appropriate for me to begin doing my part as well. With the breath of nature, I'll always be able to locate fruits and nuts. Would that be an appreciated contribution to our meals? You kidding?
Ryu grinned.
Nina might hug you if you start bringing that stuff in on a regular basis. She would.
Spar blinked.
Ah. I will. Be prepared for that, then.
It coughed.
Well then, if you'll excuse me. See you back at the camp,
Ryu called as it walked out, then chuckled under his breath, dropping his line in the water. Dinner went well that evening for all involved. Ryu hauled in a couple of fat mackerel, along with Bao and Cat's contribution of a pair of pheasants. Everybody else was pleasantly surprised when Spar brought back an armful of apples, as well as a couple bulbs of garlic to season the meat. As Jean put it, the only thing they were missing was ale and wine, but for once, even Bao was content with fresh water. Despite the good food, though, everybody had noticed by now that Sten was in an odd mood. He was silent and grim for the rest of the evening, speaking only when spoken to and even then as little as possible. It was disturbing, coming from the normally talkative Highlander, but nobody questioned him about it. Even Jean could tell how bad an idea that would be. Instead, they simply chattered with each other about unimportant, casual things, doing their best to pretend nothing was wrong. They slept well that night, and in the morning, Jean warped them back to the town east of Mount Phoebe. The ruined city had undergone a lot of change since Ryu and Bao had first come upon it, 4 months ago, on a job for the Rangers Guild. Their own home was at the rear of the town, a square, 4-storied building that towered over the rest of the community, with the squatter residence of the Fusion clan family next door. From there, neat houses extended to the south in 3 rows of 3, there were more ruined residences beyond them, but at the moment, the carpenters hadn't started rebuilding those.
So, this is your town,
Spar murmured as they walked on in.
Are all of these domiciles inhabited, then? Think so,
Bao told him.
We've been working on it. I think Lacquer might have grabbed one for himself. Can't really blame him for that,
Rand commented.
His uncle's a bit. Yeah. Weren't there some other guys coming in? Yeah, some of our old,
Ryu started to say, then grunted as a pair of burly men ambushed him and Bao, jumping out of a couple of nearby trees to pull them into noogies.
Oi! Dogi!
One of them yelled cheerfully. He was a heavy guy in his 50s, with short cropped blonde hair and a close-trimmed beard, wearing a forest green jacket and pants.
You're getting sloppy, man. Battison.
The other chuckled, nearly identical to his brother, although his hair and beard were dyed blue, and he wore a red jacket with blue pants.
Still alive, hey? Pretty impressive. How you doing, buddy? Get off of us, you apes.
Bao sputtered, he and Ryu forcing the laughing men away from them.
Sheesh, you two. Aren't you supposed to be retired now or something? Doesn't mean we can't pull one over on you two mugs.
The blonde-haired one snickered, glancing at the rest of the group.
So, mercs now, hey? Looks like you're doing well for yourselves, with a place like this. Nice to meet ya, folks. Name's Azusa, and this shiftless bum is my brother McLean. Excuse me.
McLean glared at him.
You're the one who's never held down a house in his life before this, pal. You wanna say that again to my face? Sure thing, bro.
Azusa taunted him, both of them apparently unaware of the looks the group were giving them now.
Shiftless. Bum. That does it.
McLean hollered, diving on him.
Come here. Should we do something about this?
Rand asked slowly as the brothers rolled in the dirt, fighting and swearing.
Nah, let's just keep walking.
Bao shook his head.
They'll be at this for a couple more hours. You have interesting friends,
Nina murmured as they stepped around the brawling brothers.
Why are they here, again? They're a couple of rowdies, but what Azusa doesn't know about hunting would probably kill you if you tried to eat it,
Ryu explained.
And McLean's just as good at fishing. They're the ones who taught us how, back when we were a couple of brats. Until we can get a real economy going, they'll keep the rest of the population fed. There's another ranger moving in, too, right?
Kat remembered.
Some other guy from your neck of the woods. Hans.
Bao nodded, glancing over at one of the houses that looked like it was undergoing remodeling.
That'll be his. He'll be running the local general store, probably live above it. We'll have to stop by and see if he needs any help setting it up once he gets here. That reminds me, we should all probably have Kay take a look at us, now that we're back in town,
Ryu pointed out.
Not much point in having our own in-town doctor if we don't let her make sure we don't kill ourselves, right? We're really getting into this whole town thing, aren't we?
Rand asked, smiling slightly.
Old Man Watts grabbed the last empty house, I take it. You're right, Spar. They should be all filled up now. We ought to talk to the carpenters about building some more. So then, we've got a meeting with the carpenters and appointments with Kay.
Kat sighed theatrically.
So much for our day off. We'll take another.
Ryu shrugged as they approached their house.
No big deal. Anything else? Jean.
The door to the Fusion clan family's house banged open, and a pretty, shy-looking young woman with pale skin and long blue hair ran out. Despite her demure appearance, the minimal amount of clothing she wore was anything but modest. Combined with a ridiculous amount of gold jewelry, it made her look more like she belonged on the docks than in a place like this. Dashing over to the prince, she threw her arms around her neck.
You're all right. I was so worried. When that huge brute...
She trailed off, unable to finish.
There, mademoiselle,
Jean murmured, hugging Siso back.
All is fine. My comrades were able to slay the villain even without my assistance.
He glanced up at the others, and they all nodded, heading into their own home and leaving the two of them alone.
Well, he'll be busy for a while,
Kat commented after closing the door.
Hey, Nero. We're back. Is that what all the ruckus is?
The old man snorted. He was sitting behind the counter in the front room, feet on the desk as he glanced through a book on magic.
Should have figured. See, you found your guy. Greetings,
Spar said, bowing slightly.
My name is Spar. It's nice to meet you. Nero Mani.
He replied cheerfully.
Guessing you'll be taking one of the rooms we still got left. That will not be necessary.
Spar shook its head.
I don't require. Oh, no you don't.
Ryu cut him off.
You're hanging out with us, and that means you get a room. You can take the one on the second floor, at the end of the hall. See,
Spar said slowly.
It is economically efficient for all of us to live in the same residence. Nevertheless.
Its eyes dimmed.
I have never actually had a place to live in, before. This is the first time anybody has ever offered me one. Are you certain?
It trailed off.
Wouldn't have said it if we didn't,
Bao assured it.
Come on, I'll show you the way.
Putting an arm around Spar's shoulder, he led it into the back.
Might as well come too,
Rand agreed, following them.
Think I'll head up to the roof for a bit.
Kat shrugged.
Coming, Nina. That sounds nice,
the Windian agreed, and the girls headed back as well.
Everything still okay around here?
Ryu asked Nero, sitting down in one of the chairs scattered around the lobby. He idly noted that, sometime since they had entered the town, Sten had slipped off without being noticed.
Same old,
Nero grunted.
Jean dropped off some fella from the circus a few days back, and he moved on into that last house, so the carpenters have been talking about rebuilding a few more once they're done expanding their places. That's right, they wanted to open some businesses up themselves.
Ryu snapped his fingers.
Should help once we start getting travelers through here. I'll have to drop by later today and talk to them about it. Probably a good idea.
Nero raised an eyebrow.
How about you folks? Siso was too hysterical to really talk much in the way of detail when she popped back up here again out of the blue. Still don't know why that happened. Try not to overthink it,
Ryu suggested, shaking his head.
Another demon, another dollar. Wasn't too bad, really. Hearing you talk like that makes my blood run cold, son.
Nero rolled his eyes.
What about this Spark guy, then? He on the team, or what? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Ryu frowned.
Up to it if it wants to stick around after we finish up this part of the job, really. It's not bad, I'll give it that much, and we could use another jack of all trades on the team.
Nero blinked.
Long story.
Ryu shrugged, walking past.
I'll explain later. Ain't they all?
The old man chuckled, returning to his reading. As Kat had predicted, the rest of their day was a busy one. Once they'd all taken a little relaxation time, they held a team meeting to discuss the events of the previous days, mostly for Nero's benefit. Though Sten was noticeably absent, nobody had been able to find him. After they'd finished bringing the old man up to speed, Ryu went over to meet with the carpenters, and after some discussion, they decided to plan on rebuilding 6 more houses. Next, he took his turn seeing Kay. It seemed that Rand, Jean, and Nina had already stopped in while he was busy with the others. The doctor was stern with him, explaining that all 3 needed to take better care of themselves whenever they broke any bones, even if white magic healed the injuries. Ryu himself had had most of his ribs, an arm, and a shoulder busted by the demon lord Kawadara, and she didn't hesitate to let him know exactly what shape his skeleton would be in another couple years if he didn't follow her advice, which he promised to do. Once he was done, he dropped by Watt's house to make sure the old man was settling in all right, then went home, telling Nero to spread the word that the team would be having a meeting that evening before dinner. He spent a few hours relaxing in his room then, before heading up to the roof to watch the sunset. Autumn was moving on, and the days were growing shorter. After the sun had gone down, he walked back down to the building's meeting room, and waited for everybody else to drift in, one by one.
All right, let's get this over with so we can enjoy tomorrow, he said once they'd all arrived. It looks like our next step is figuring out a way to communicate with the people of Tunlin. That's going to be more than a little tricky. You think?
Bao rolled his eyes.
At least we've got the magic hood, so that's half the problem solved. Man, who would have thought that mess would actually end up coming in handy down the road? Still doesn't help us actually communicate with them,
Kat pointed out.
We'd just end up with a lot of people telling us they have no idea what we're saying. More or less.
Ryu nodded.
I'm guessing this is a long shot, but I don't suppose there's any chance any of us are musically inclined. I can play the piano a little,
Nina said dubiously.
I'm hardly a virtuoso, though. And it's not really something you can take with you into town. Yeah, if we were hauling a piano everywhere we went, we'd get some pretty funny looks,
Rand agreed.
Besides, playing music's a bit different from communicating though right? Not sure it'd work anyways. Probably not,
Ryu conceded.
Think we'll be able to find some kind of translator we can hire, then? Highly doubtful, I am afraid, Mon ami,
Jean told him. The prince had returned to the coloration that meant he had fused with Siso once more. Nobody had asked about it, for obvious reasons.
Among the countries of the world, Tunlin is unique in that they do not send ambassadors to other courts, nor do any others send any to them. The communications barrier is simply that insurmountable, which indicates to me that translators are so rare as to be almost non-existent. Great.
Ryu slapped his face.
So we can't talk their language, and we're not likely to find anybody else who can, either. How the hell are we going to pull this one off? There's one way,
Sten said quietly, the first words he had spoken to anybody all day. The Highlander had shuffled into the meeting room, downcast, and then stared at the table without looking up the whole time so far.
The therapy pillow and the magic hood aren't the only artifacts left over from the Second Dragon War. There's another. When the last hero went to Tunland to get that thing, he needed the magic hood too, and something else. A magical flute, enchanted so that any bum off the street could play it perfectly enough to talk to them.
Everybody else except for Spar exchanged cynical glances.
Bingo!
Ryu sighed.
Alright, where is this thing? High Fort,
Sten said flatly, and suddenly, the situation was no longer even slightly amusing.
The capital of Highland. My old digs. Crap,
Bao said after a moment.
Is there an issue?
Spar asked politely.
I seem to be missing something here. Sten is.
Nina started to say, then paused.
I suppose it's. Well, one could say.
She trailed off helplessly.
It's complicated,
Ryu summarized it.
Look, man. I don't know what exactly it is, and I don't care. You don't want to talk about it, and we can respect that. If you want to stay here with Nero for this one, we'll understand. Won't work.
Sten shook his head.
My clan's highly militaristic. You could say that we're actually all one huge army of mercenaries, we sell our swords to other countries and global powers. That makes us about as xenophobic as they come. There's no way you would make it into High Fort without one of us vouching for you. I'm the only way you'll get in through the gates. Problem is, if anybody recognizes me. Straight into the slammer.
Rand guessed.
As if.
Sten's eyes dulled.
Try a firing squad. What did you do?
Kat blurted out, then winced as a pained look came over Sten's face.
Sorry. Wasn't thinking. A possibility comes to mind,
Jean said after a long, awkward moment.
Your fur, mon ami. Brown is not the only color among your kind, is it? Not at all,
Sten replied, looking up at last.
Blonde, orange, red, black. But using dye won't work. They'll be able to smell it, and it'll be a red flag. Non, I had something more subtle in mind,
Jean assured him.
Mademoiselle Sana has expressed interest in attempting the art of fusion with you, yes? When I did so with Mademoiselle Sisso, as you can see, my own coloration was altered. Perhaps if you try it as well, it will change yours, and you will be less recognizable. That's actually a pretty good idea,
Ryu told him, blinking.
That might work. Are you feeling alright, Jean?
The prince blinked.
I am perfectly healthy, mon ami. There is not something going around, I hope? Mademoiselle K mentioned nothing of the sort to me.
Maybe, Sten murmured, looking a little more like his old self.
If we stay out of towns and villages, just to be on the safe side. I'll be able to talk us through the front gate by saying we have business with the Rangers Guild. Then if we can get through to the elder in there, maybe you guys could convince her to let you borrow the flute. It's not like anybody ever actually uses the damn thing. It's just a national treasure. Get in, talk the old lady into getting us the loot, get out, hey.
Bao nodded.
Sounds like my kind of job. And keep an eye out for any demon lords while we're there,
Ryu added.
There's probably one somewhere around, but the old lady said he wasn't being obvious about it, so that's a good sign. If we can pull this off without getting his attention, all the better. We do not need another round of what we went through with Kawadara. Nobody needs that, man,
Bao half-joked, and the meeting broke up with everybody in a better mood than when they'd come, for once.
Come on, let's get some grub.
They went over to the Rivobs for their meal, and after a couple rounds of after-dinner drinks, they turned in. As he undressed and fell onto his bed, Ryu mused to himself that the town finally actually felt like home. It was good to be back. Power. We need more of your power. God needs more of your power. Give yourself to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Sacrifice your bodies and souls to God. You are destined to become God's power. The next morning, nobody commented on the new, bright fuchsia hue of Sten's fur. It certainly went a long way towards making him look like somebody else. They took the day off, as Ryu had promised, simply enjoying themselves, relaxing with each other and socializing with the others in town. There were enough of them now that various social circles were beginning to form, which the team easily slipped into. The day after that, they went down to the shore, called up Grandpa the Whale, and rowed him south, to a sheltered cove Sten knew on Highland's west coast. The southeasternmost country of the world was highly complex. Geographically, it held 3 different environments within its borders, all vastly different. The western portion was heavily forested, almost as much as the sea of trees. It was this that they moved through at first, with sparse help, dodging more hunting cockatrices and prowling Komodo bandits. To the southeast was the great desert of Arad, the largest in the world. According to Sten, ancient highlanders had once lived there before expanding their territory west and north. It was apparently a total death trap, and they planned to avoid it completely. The northeast part of the country was a series of sheer cliffs rising up from the sands, almost like stairs, leading into the mountains. It was there that High Fort was located. As Sten had suggested, they avoided towns and villages as they headed higher and higher up the cliffs, closer and closer towards their destination.
Just how tall is this place?
Kat asked as they drew close, a week after setting out. High Fort had been sighted several days ago, but rather than indicating their nearness to it, that simply drew the eye to how tall the fortress truly was, a nest of towers of various heights with bridges connecting them like a spider's web.
From here, or from sea level?
Sten asked her.
It's not even connected to the mainland. The fort is built on top of a spire of rock rising out of the ocean, and it goes all the way down inside that, too. We'll have to cross a bridge to get to the front gate. That doesn't seem like a sound idea,
Nina murmured, frowning.
What if there's an earthquake? There's some kind of quake resistance mechanisms built into the place,
Sten explained.
Lost technology. I never really understood how it all worked myself, but apparently, it'll keep it from falling over. Lost technology, hey.
Ryu narrowed his eyes.
Kawadaro is all over that. 5 Zenny says this demon lord will be too. Stay out of the basement, then,
Rand grunted.
Got it. Alright, there's the edge of the cliff up ahead,
Ryu said as they approached it. As Sten had said, there was indeed a narrow bridge spanning the gap over the ocean to the pillar of stone. Atop it, a circular outer wall rose above the cluster of towers for 100 feet.
Yeesh. Wouldn't want to attack this place. Kind of the idea, boss,
Sten muttered quietly, looking up at it.
It was supposed to be the most impenetrable fortress on the face of the planet when they built it. I believe that it is safe to say that they succeeded admirably, then,
Spar told him. Even the grassman seemed impressed by the massive edifice.
Yeah.
Sten remained still, as if frozen to the spot, staring up at it.
Listen, boss. Do we really have to do this? Now? I'm afraid so, Sten,
Ryu told him solemnly, the others all remaining silent.
I'm sorry. But we have to. Yeah.
The Highlander chuckled bitterly.
I was afraid of that. It's just. I never wanted to come home. Ever.
Shaking his head, he walked onto the bridge and yelled up at the wall.
Hey, Sergeant. Independent contractors, from over in Oria. We've got business with the Elder of the Rangers Guild.
A few moments passed, and then with a mechanical grinding noise, the massive gates at the end of the bridge swung open.
No turning back now,
Sten muttered, more to himself than to them, and glanced over his shoulder.
All right, people, let's form up into 2 ranks. We're not soldiers, but we can do our best to look like professionals, at least. Kat, Spar, and Rand behind the boss. Bao, Nina, and Jean behind me. Don't ask too many questions, and don't poke around where we shouldn't. Let's get this over with and get out. Right,
Ryu agreed, giving the others a glance. This wasn't the first time Sten's personality had abruptly changed, falling back into what Ryu assumed were old habits, but it had never lasted longer than a few moments before. They fell into rank, like he had said, and proceeded across the bridge and through the gate.
Hey, what they?
A guard just inside the door yelped in a harsh, guttural Highland accent, nearly dropping his spear. He was a big, muscular Highlander in a spotless, blue and gold uniform with a flat cap and decorative shoulders, and the armor he wore under it looked equally perfect. Recovering, he glared at Ryu.
Alright, assholes, real funny. I don't know what the guys up top think they're doing, but there's no foreigners allowed in here, so you can just head right back out. I'm speaking for these guys, bud.
Sten started to say, then trailed off as he locked eyes with the guard, whose jaw dropped.
Skies. Corporal Gain. General Sten.
The guard whispered.
You're alive. General?
Kat yelped, eyes widening.
No,
Sten said firmly.
Not a general. Not anymore. General Sten.
Gain repeated slowly, still thinking it over, eyes wide.
What happened? Everybody thought you died at Gunheim, with the 21st. Heh.
Sten turned to stare at a wall, face blank.
Yeah, I know. Probably would have been better if I had, really. Sten.
Bao asked quietly.
What was? What's Gunheim? Gunheim was a town in Fog Valley, in northern Carmen,
Rand explained grimly.
Something like a town, anyways. Be more accurate to call it the biggest bandit's nest in the world. The Ogre clan were building up their numbers there, so the Church of Saint Eva hired the Highlanders to take it out, and my people let it slide just this once. We knew that we'd probably be the Ogre's #1 target pretty soon if we didn't. I don't know the details, but they say it was pretty ugly. Ugly?
Sten whispered, as he started to shake like a leaf.
It was hell on earth. We sent in 3 companies, into fucking Fog Valley, in the middle of a summer drought, to attack a heavily fortified enemy encampment. No supplies, no water, no way of getting through those walls, and never knowing when they were going to come out and butcher us some more, just for kicks. And all we could do is wait there, because we had made it that far, and we had to hold our position and hope backup would arrive before we all died like pigs. You can't know what it was like,
Gain agreed, staring at his hands.
Not unless you were there. There's never been anything like it ever since, thank Lawden for that much.
Shaking himself, he straightened up.
But just when we thought it was all lost, General Sten. Shut up, Corporal.
Sten snapped, whirling on him, rage in his eyes.
Don't ever bring that up again. Nobody should ever talk about that. And don't go spreading the word around that I'm back, either. As far as Heifert's concerned, I died out there, you hear me? Hey.
Gain blinked.
What are you talking about, General? When everybody hears you're back, they'll call you a hero. They'll.
In a blur of motion, Sten smashed him across the face with the butt of one of his daggers, drawing it faster than Ryu could see.
Sten, what the hell?
Kat demanded, lunging forward to pull him away from the soldier.
If you ever call me a hero again, soldier, you'll be able to put in for disability pay,
Sten told Gain quietly, apparently uncaring that she was holding him back.
Do it twice, and your family will be picking up a pension. You hear me? I'm not a general anymore, and I'm sure as hell not a hero. I'm a deserter, Gain. I ran away. I faked my death so I could get out, and I've been running ever since. I'm a coward, and I always was. I just never let it show.
Sten. Gain whispered, backing up until he was against the wall.
What are you saying? You're not a... Yes I am,
Sten cut him off, slipping out of Kat's arms like his own were dislocated, prompting a surprised grunt from her. He made no further moves towards Gain, though, simply turning to stare at the wall.
The only hero of Gunheim is Turbo. He's the one who stayed on the field through that slaughterhouse to fight to the end.
Shaking his head, he turned to glance at Gain.
I'd heard he made it out alive, too. How's he doing these days? He's got to have made it up to General by now, right? Sten.
Gain frowned then.
I probably shouldn't talk about that. Not if you're not enlisted anymore.
He shook his head.
Funny you should bring him up, though. He's been looking forward to seeing you again. He's what?
Sten went white.
He knew? That's impossible. Not him,
Gain explained.
Shapukai. She started going on about how you would be coming home soon, a few days ago. Everybody else thought she had lost it, but Turbo. I don't know how she knew, or how she convinced him, but he's been waiting, ever since. Shapukai,
Sten hissed, going even paler.
Shit. And Turbo. How the hell am I supposed to face him after what I did?
He buried his head in his hands, shaking again.
I can't do it. I never should have come back here. Hey, Sten,
Ryu said quietly.
It's okay. Calm down. Now that you've got us in, if you want to just hang out somewhere, we'll take it from here. He'll find me,
Sten whispered.
He'll find me, and he'll.
Trailing off, he raised his head to stare at Ryu.
Boss. We're not going to make you do anything you don't want to, Sten,
Nina told him, eyes dark and sympathetic. She knew, more than any of the others, what it was like to never be able to go home again.
I'm not going to say that we understand, since I don't think we could if we tried, but we're still your comrades. We've got your back. Maybe.
Sten began looking around jerkily, eyes darting.
That guard station down below. Is there anybody who knows me in there? No, none of the guys on duty were at Gunheim,
Gain told him, biting his lip.
But Sten. Aren't you even going to go see Her Highness? You know better than that, Gain,
Sten said somberly, looking down at his feet.
Her, most of all. I can't face her. Not after what I did.
He walked past him, towards a staircase in the side of the narrow entry room.
Look, Gain. Don't tell anybody about this, alright? I shouldn't have come back, so. Let's just pretend I didn't. Sten, man.
Bao put a hand on his shoulder.
It's okay. We'll handle this, and then we'll get out of here. Sorry about this, guys,
Sten replied, not looking at them.
I didn't mean for this to be a problem for you, but... Looks like you'll have to get the flute without me. I'm sorry.
Without another word, he walked down the stairs, and none of them tried to stop him.
Who are you guys?
Gain asked, as if remembering them for the first time since he had seen Sten. Ryu got the feeling he wasn't too bright.
You're the General's friends. Comrades,
Jean said somberly, even he was affected by the mood.
Freelance adventurers, the Dragon Kin. You mean mercs?
Gain raised an eyebrow.
An independent band, hey? What are you here for? Got some business with the local elder of the Rangers Guild,
Ryu explained.
Don't suppose you could tell us how to find her? I probably shouldn't.
He frowned, stroking his chin.
But then, I probably shouldn't let you through, either, and the General wouldn't like it if I didn't do that.
He nodded sharply.
If you're the General's friends, you're an exception. Alright, Elder Gundred's in a meeting with some of the General staff right now. Keep going straight through from here until you cross 2 bridges, then head up the stairs on the right. The first door on your left is the war room, but don't go in there, General Shapukai isn't the kind of woman you want to cross. You mentioned her before,
Kat recalled.
She have some sort of history with Sten. I'd better not talk about that either.
Gain winced.
I don't mind letting you guys through, but if General Shapukai finds out I actually said anything about her. That bad.
Rand whistled.
Worse.
Gain grimaced.
She's a tactical and mechanical genius, really eloquent, and beautiful to boot, but she's got a bad temper and a strong will, and her personality is... Well, let's just say she doesn't have many friends.
He shook his head.
Look, just stay away from her, alright? No worries,
Ryu assured him.
We're not here to cause trouble. We'll wait outside that room until Elder Gundred comes out, then get our business done with her quick and easy. Alright.
Gain returned to his post.
Get moving, then. Don't want to have to explain to my sergeant what's going on here if he comes down here. Yeah, no,
Ryu agreed, as they walked past. Nobody talked much as they continued into the depths of High Fort. Despite its sky-high construction, the insides of the towers were dark and cramped, the halls narrow and winding. Without Gain's directions, they'd have been hopelessly lost. Strange mechanical device abounded, as Sten had told them. Some strange booths seemed to be a kind of device meant for raising and lowering people tens of stories, and other bizarre devices simply puttered along without any apparent purpose other than releasing steam. The bridges were an entirely different story, straight and narrow. They seemed to be the only means of moving between towers. Looking around them as they walked across, they saw dozens more above and below, though no two were ever on the exact same level. Despite the high stone rails on either side, they couldn't help shivering slightly as they looked down to the wave-washed shores far, far below. The stone pillar was hollow in its center all the way through, and many windows could be seen on the inside of it. Several Highlander guards gave them odd looks as they passed by, but nobody questioned their presence, apparently assuming that if they had made it in this far, they had good reason for being there. Keeping their pace quick but casual, they soon found the door they had been directed to, and leaned against the walls around it, waiting for the meeting to pass.
Sounds like they're having a pretty spirited discussion,
Kat said after a few moments, leaning her head to one side.
No kidding,
Bao agreed, wincing.
That one lady's got a pretty expressive voice, doesn't she? You can hear what they're saying?
Spar asked, blinking.
Through a closed door? That's quite impressive. Anything interesting?
Rand raised an eyebrow.
They're talking in Highlander,
Bao muttered, narrowing his eyes.
I don't really speak it, but I know a few words here and there. I think they're saying that one of their companies is mutinying, down in the southwest. They're having some trouble putting it down. The chick who's doing all the yelling wants to just crush them with weight of numbers. And use rookie companies to do it instead of veterans. They have a real winner on their hands there, alright,
Nina murmured sardonically.
That must be Shapukai. Sounds like she's the only girl in there except for the elder,
Kat agreed.
And she's staying quiet. I don't know a word of this gobbledygook, but I think the other guys in there are trying to stand up to Shapukai.
She winced.
Ooh, that sounds like it hurt. Should we really be listening to this?
Jean asked, looking uncomfortable.
It is not truly proper, no? As well as none of our concern. Oh, yes it is.
Bao hissed, eyes suddenly widening.
Now she's talking about some new super weapon they've been pouring the treasury into. She says. Crap, she's saying once it's done, they're gonna start conquering other countries instead of hiring out to them. Elder Gundred's talking now,
Kat growled.
Still can't understand it, but I think she's refusing to go along with. Oh, no, you idiot, don't.
Everybody heard the sharp crack of bone shattering, and a scream cut short.
Crap,
Ryu hissed.
So much for the plan. Let's get out of. Was Sewer Holly?
An elderly male Highlander in an elaborate red uniform demanded, opening the door, before switching languages, probably for their benefit.
General Shapukai. Foreign spies, listening in on our meeting. Guards. Well, what have we here?
A female Highlander said, walking out, as soldiers rushed out of various doors and halls to surround them, most of them bearing crossbows. She was in her mid-20s, with cinnamon-colored fur and a bright pink, short and pointed wig atop her head. Tall and lean, her features would have been attractive save for the cruel sneer that seemed to be her standard expression. Her uniform was red and gold, and she wore a rapier at her hip.
Intruders, are you? Impressive, getting this far. General Shapukai, I presume,
Ryu said, raising his hands and giving the rest of the team a look indicating that they should do the same, no matter how good they were. Surrounded by dozens of crossbows was a no-win situation.
I assure you, we can explain this. Shapukai, 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 Shapukai.
She grinned, her bright red eyes dilating and contracting rapidly, and most of them froze, as Ryu glanced down at the dragon's tear and saw that it was inky black.
I'm sure you could, but I have no interest in your storytelling ability. The fact of the matter is that foreigners are not allowed within these walls, and especially not in hearing distance of a classified war council. We didn't,
Kat started to object, then tensed up as the light dawned.
Oh, shit. Didn't hear anything.
Shapukai guessed mockingly.
Do you honestly expect me to believe that? Guards. Take them to the dungeons, immediately, and lock them up in a couple of our family-size cells.
She laughed, turning and waving a hand, as the crossbow-bearing guards approached.
Buddy?
Bao asked quietly.
Go along with it,
Ryu growled, staring at Shapukai's back.
She's got us dead to rights for now. We'll have to count on an outside chance.
Sten, don't let us down.
Oh, that reminds me, somebody tell Colonel Turbo his old friend has arrived,
Shapukai added with another smirk as she walked back into the meeting room, and Ryu's last hope sank with the click of the door behind her. It puts my back up against the wall.